The grill sizzled with fat as I flipped burgers, grease popping on my apron while the voices behind me grew louder with laughter. My parents' backyard in Maple Springs, Tennessee, was filled wall-to-wall with people celebrating their 40th anniversary, banners strung across the fence, folding chairs on the lawn, cheap beer in red Solo cups. Everyone called it a family party, but I knew better. It was a show, and I was working backstage. My siblings, Travis, Hannah, and Beck, lounged around the picnic tables, letting their kids run loose. I'd been on my feet since morning, hauling coolers, hanging lights, even running back to the store twice because someone forgot buns. Same old story. I'm 36, the eldest, and I've always been the one who makes things work. Then my dad, Wayne, clinked a fork against his beer bottle, standing tall like a Southern king about to declare war. Mom, Sandra, giggled beside him, clinging to his arm like she still thought it was romantic. The crowd hushed. "We've got a special surprise," Dad barked, his voice all gravel and pride. "Next week, we're taking the whole family to Maui. One more party, this time with sand and a drink in our hands." Cheers broke out. Travis hooped. Beck's wife screamed. Even the little ones yelled about surfing and volcanoes. I felt a flicker of joy. A break. Something for me. I wiped my hands on a towel and stepped forward, smiling. "That's great. What time do we leave?" That's when the air shifted. My father turned, looked me square in the face, and said, "You don't need to know that, Mason. You're not part of this." The words landed like a punch. "You can stay and watch the kids," he added, like that made it better. Then my mother, Sandra, who used to hum lullabies when I had nightmares, laughed. A short, sharp, dismissive little sound. The table went quiet. No one looked at me. Not one person. Not Travis, who I'd bailed out of rent 3 times. Not Hannah, whose twins I watched every Tuesday so she could go to her Pilates class. Beck just looked down and muttered something about checking flights. I stood there with a spatula in one hand and shame crawling up the back of my neck. After everything I'd done for them, skipped college to work construction when Dad lost his job, missed every holiday to patch up their lives, they still didn't see me. They never had. I tossed the spatula on the grill and walked. Past the kitchen. Past the lawn. Through the screen door that slammed behind me hard enough to rattle the frame. Someone called my name. I didn't stop. The gravel crunched under my boots as I climbed into my pickup and drove straight to my apartment, a 1-bedroom box over a closed-down laundromat. Still smelled like dryer sheets and mildew. I sat on the couch in the dark, surrounded by remnants of a life built for other people. My toolbox was in the corner, the same one I used to fix Dad's roof last winter. A crumpled drawing from Beck's daughter, left in my car after school pickup. None of it mine. All of it borrowed. I was 36, single, broke, and disposable. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it. Instead, I thought about that trip to Maui. Then I thought about a city I'd passed through once, Charleston, South Carolina. Fishing boats, seagulls, salty air. I'd only been there for an afternoon on a delivery run, but it stuck with me. It had something my life didn't. Space. At 3 a.m., I stuffed a duffel with jeans, old boots, 2 flannels, and my camera, the one I'd almost sold last year to cover Travis's traffic tickets. I grabbed my cash from the drawer. Every saved tip. Every dollar from overtime shifts. Then I checked the bus schedule. 5:10 a.m. outbound to Charleston. I hovered over Sophie's name, my youngest sister, only 17. She was the only one who ever asked me how I was doing. But I didn't call her. I couldn't hear her say, "Please don't go," because I would have stayed. And I couldn't afford that anymore. I locked the door behind me and didn't look back. The bus rolled in as the sun cracked the edge of the sky. I handed the driver my ticket and sank into a seat near the back. As the town faded in the windows, the hardware store, the church, my childhood house, I didn't cry. I just breathed. For the first time in years. The bus hissed to a stop just after dawn, brakes squealing as we rolled into Charleston's North Side terminal. I stepped down into the salt-laced air, boots hitting pavement like punctuation. My shoulders ached from carrying my duffel, but I didn't feel tired. Not yet. The city buzzed around me, tugboats bellowed from the docks, gulls wheeled over church steeples, and the air smelled like old wood and diesel fuel. It wasn't picturesque. Not in a postcard kind of way. But it was alive. And nobody here knew my name. That was the point. I found a room to rent above a pool hall on East Bay. $40 a night, cash only. The guy who handed me the key had a cigarette behind each ear and didn't bother asking questions. The room had peeling paint, a mattress without a frame, and one cracked window facing the alley. It was perfect. I crashed for a few hours, woke to the sound of laughter from below, and hit the streets with a folded resume and the last of my clean shirts. I wasn't looking for a career. I just needed a reason to stay. By noon, I had a job, a tiny dockside cafe called Bay Bean and Breakfast. It sat wedged between a bait shop and a tattoo parlor. The manager, some wiry guy named Hugo, didn't blink when I said I had no food service experience. "You can carry 2 mugs and not cry when someone yells at you?" he asked. I nodded. "You're hired. Show up at 6. I worked the early shift, fumbling coffee orders, mixing up omelets, learning fast how cranky dockhands could get before 8 a.m. The tips were small, the burns were real, and I botched 2 lattes in a row, but nobody asked me to fix their roof or babysit their kids. It was the hardest job I'd ever loved. That's where I met June. She worked the counter, all tattoos, sharp jokes, and a confidence that could slice concrete. She didn't offer small talk, just smirked when I spilled creamer and muttered, "You're slower than my grandma's internet." I fired back. "Least I don't terrify customers into tipping." She laughed. For real. And that laugh, not polite, not filtered, landed harder than I expected. June didn't ask who I used to be. She didn't care what I left behind. She just told me where to find cheap groceries and which bars weren't tourist traps. It wasn't friendship. Not yet. But it felt like an invitation. After work, I walked the docks with my old camera, the one I'd dusted off from the bottom of my closet in Maple Springs. I'd forgotten how it felt to create something. I snapped shots of rusted trawlers, wet footprints on concrete, seagulls frozen mid-flap. The pictures weren't good, but they were mine. That night, I sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress and stared at my phone. One notification. Sophie. Just her name lighting up the screen. I didn't open it right away. I couldn't. She was the one person who might actually be hurting, who might be wondering where I'd gone. When I finally tapped the message, it read, "They're freaking out. Where are you? I miss you. Please call." My chest tightened. Sophie didn't deserve this. But I knew what would happen if I called. She'd beg. She'd cry. I'd feel the old hooks dig back in, the guilt, the loyalty, the exhaustion. I texted back. "I'm safe. I had to leave. I'll explain someday." And I meant it. I didn't want to explain. Just not yet. I put the phone face down, grabbed the camera, and stepped out into the night. The city pulsed with life, neon signs flickering over cracked sidewalks, music thumping through windows, salt wind tugging at my jacket. For the first time in 20 years, I wasn't anyone's backup plan. I was just Mason. No title. No chore list. No weight I didn't choose. And I was ready to find out who that man could be. The city found a rhythm, and I moved with it. Morning started at 4:30, the streets still wet from dew, and whatever the night dragged through. I'd pull on my apron, grab a stale muffin from the day-old bin, and open shop with June. She'd already be there, black coffee in hand, tapping a cigarette out on the step even though she never lit it. We didn't talk much at first. Just traded sarcasm and split the work, me at the tables, her behind the counter. But slowly, like steam rising off the griddle, something warmer started to settle between us. She started slipping me extra croissants when I looked like hell. I'd refill her coffee before she asked. We weren't friends. Not yet. But we were something. After shifts, I'd hit the docks with my camera, documenting the life that churned at the edges of the city. Rusted chains. Pelicans circling shrimp boats. A kid skipping rocks in a puddle by the fish market. I didn't know if any of it was good, but I was shooting again. And that meant something. One evening, after a long shift, I showed June a photo I liked, a fisherman in mid-shout, arm extended, face all sun and grit. She looked at it, really looked, then said, "Damn, that's got teeth." It was the highest praise I'd gotten in years. It lit something. That week, I took a risk and walked into a local pawn shop off East Meeting Street. Traded in my watch, the one Dad gave me when I turned 21, engraved with, "We always count on you." It felt symbolic. I used the cash to buy a better lens. That night, I walked the harbor until midnight, snapping shots of cranes under moonlight. For once, I wasn't trying to make anyone proud. I just wanted the photo to feel like something. Back in my room above the pool hall, I started printing my best shots. Taped them on the walls like anchors in a drifting world. The fisherman, a gull frozen in flight. A close-up of a cracked knuckle from a dockhand's fist. All mine. All real. The next text from Sophie came while I was mid-shift, refilling sugar caddies. "They leave for Hawaii tomorrow. I think Mom still expects you to show up. She hasn't packed anything herself." I stared at it for a full minute, the spoon shaking in my hand. June noticed. You okay? She asked, pouring espresso. I lied. Just low blood sugar. But the truth was, it hit harder than I thought it would. Mom didn't pack. Because deep down, she still believed I'd fold. That I'd come back, like always, and carry the weight so they could sip pina coladas and call it family. I wanted to scream. To throw my phone into the deep fryer. Instead, I deleted the message and went back to wiping down tables. Later that night, though, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor with my photos spread around me, the soft thump of pool balls echoing through the ceiling. I stared at one of the shots, a pier post tangled in rope, and thought about all the times I'd cleaned up their messes. I wasn't a knot anymore. I was the one untying them. And I wasn't going back. The morning their flight was supposed to leave for Hawaii, I took my camera down to the piers and shot the sunrise. It rose like a bruise, purple bleeding into gold, and I caught it right as a pelican skimmed the surface of the water. One photo, timed just right. I looked at the image on my screen and whispered, yeah, that one. Back home, they were probably loading bags into Travis's SUV, arguing about sunblock and gate times. Maybe Mom was still waiting, suitcase by the door, pretending I'd pull in last minute like a scene in a bad movie. But I was here, and I was staying. June showed up to the cafe that morning in a hoodie 2 sizes too big and a smirk. You look like you slept in a camera bag, she said, poking my shoulder. I grinned. You say that like it's a bad thing. You get any good ones? I showed her the shot. She whistled low. That's art, Mason. Like, frame it and sell it art. I shrugged. I didn't trust compliments yet, not even hers. But it felt good. Better than anything I'd heard in years. After work, June caught me at the lockers and said, hey, friend of mine runs a photography class. Chill group. You should come. Could help, sharpen the edges. I hesitated. Classes meant people. People meant questions. But she smiled like she knew that already. No pressure. Just show up. That night, I did. The class met in a repurposed warehouse behind a brewery. About a dozen folks, most older than me, a few younger. A man named Paul ran it. Wiry, quick-talking, eyes like he'd seen too much and kept going anyway. He welcomed me like I'd been coming for years. We shot the docks under streetlights. I captured a silhouette of a man dragging a fishing net, the glow from a warehouse lamp throwing shadows like ghost hands across the pavement. Paul leaned over, looked at my screen, and said, you've got something. Keep chasing it. It knocked the wind out of me. No one had ever told me that, not without needing something in return. Not my parents, not my siblings, not a single boss from a dozen construction jobs. Keep chasing it. After class, June and I walked back to her car, when kicking off the water. You belong here, she said, almost too casual. Here in the city? No. I mean, in this. The camera. The work. You're not just starting over. You're starting something. I didn't answer right away. I looked out at the crane silhouetted against the skyline and let the silence stretch. Back at my room, I found another message from Sophie. Mom cried when the flight left without you. She said it doesn't feel like a family vacation. I stared at the screen. For a second, I felt something twist. Regret? Guilt? But then I thought about June's words. About Paul's. I thought about how I'd stood there, capturing the harbor as the sun bled into morning, while my mother waited for a son she never treated like one. I turned off the phone, taped the new photo to the wall, and started printing another. 3 weeks into the class, Paul pulled me aside after everyone else left. The big warehouse echoed with the sound of folding chairs scraping concrete. You've got a style, he said, tapping a print I'd shot of a shrimp boat lit by the dying sun. Not technical, but raw. You see what others walk past. I swallowed hard. Thanks. He grinned. We're doing a pop-up exhibit in a few weeks. Dockside gallery. Local work only. You should submit something. I laughed under my breath. I don't think I may. You are, he cut in. Trust me. You don't have to be a professional to make someone feel something. June was waiting outside, leaning on the hood of her dented Corolla. She raised an eyebrow when I told her. You gonna do it? She asked, sipping a can of lemon soda. I don't know. I've never put myself out there. She smiled. That's the whole point. We sat on the trunk of her car, passing the soda back and forth. The ocean wind tugged at her hoodie, and for the first time, I realized how comfortable silence had become between us. She didn't need my story to treat me like I mattered. That night, I went home and laid every photo I had on the bed, dozens now. Some rough, some better than I remembered. One of a dockhand asleep on a coil of rope. One of a stray dog framed by warehouse shadows. One of the harbor at 5:14 a.m., Pink sky just starting to yawn. I picked 5. Printed them large. Named the series Working Light. I didn't tell anyone back home. They still hadn't called. Not even Sophie, though I caught myself checking more than I should have. Her silence stung in a different way. Not neglect. Not guilt. Just absence. I hoped she was okay, but I didn't reach out. My world was here now. At the cafe, things clicked easier. Hugo gave me more hours. I learned how to fix the espresso machine when it jammed. Regulars started knowing my name. "You're the one with the camera, right?" a guy asked one morning. "My buddy said you caught him hauling lobster crates last week. Looked like a damn superhero in the picture." I laughed. "He's got a good face for work." "You make it look like it matters," the guy said. And I didn't know what to say to that, because I'd spent 36 years making everything matter except me. The day of the pop-up exhibit, I showed up early, prints in hand, heart thudding like a dropped wrench. The gallery was small, a reworked shipping container near the marina. Exposed beams, string lights, folding tables covered in local art. Paul gave me a corner near the window and a roll of painter's tape. "You brought the right ones," he said. "People feel these." June arrived mid-show with 2 coffees and a grin. "Look at you," she teased. "All serious artist." I rolled my eyes but couldn't hide the smile. People came. Dockhands. Tourists. Baristas from other corners of the city. A guy bought one of my prints, the one of the dockhand asleep on the ropes. $50 cash. It felt like $1 million. After the show, Paul clapped me on the back. "Told you," he said. "Keep going." That night, I sat in my room, $50 lighter, because I used it to buy myself a real camera bag and a head full of static. I still didn't know what I was becoming, but I was no longer the guy who always said yes. I was no longer the backup plan, and I was never going back. The week after the pop-up, the gallery tagged me in a post. My photo, the dockhand curled up on rope, was their most interacted piece online. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I knew it felt different than anything back home. Nobody was patting me on the back because I bailed someone out. No one called it help. This was mine. My eye. My frame. My name in the caption. Mason Burke, artist. The words made my skin itch and my chest swell at the same time. June showed up at my place with Thai food and said, "I found this old crate at the flea market. I think you should use it for your gear." I opened it. Solid wood. Smelled like cedar and dust. She'd painted the inside with a swirl of waves and wrote, "Working Light," under the lid in Sharpie. Thought you might need a place to keep your stuff when it gets serious. It was such a quiet gift, but it nearly undid me. I looked at her, really looked, and said, "I think it already is." She didn't say anything, just smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder while we ate noodles on the floor. In another life, I might have ruined this moment trying to define it, trying to control it, trying to figure out what came next. But now, I just let it be. Work at the cafe kept steady. I got promoted to opening lead. Hugo trusted me with the register. Locals started calling me the camera guy. Even had a high school kid ask if I gave lessons. Paul messaged me a flyer, another exhibit, this time a regional show 2 towns over. "You ready?" he asked. I was. I submitted a new piece, a long exposure shot of harbor workers in motion, blur and grit and sunset all tangled together. I titled it, "Hands That Hold the Morning." The morning the selection email came in, I was folding towels at the cafe. I saw the subject line, "Congratulations," and had to sit down. I'd made it. Official. Selected. Name in the program. I told June that night on the dock, her legs dangling over the edge, boots tapping the wooden post. "Guess I'm a real artist now," I said. She just grinned. "You always were." That night, after she left, I stood at the edge of the water. Charleston glittered behind me, the moon carved silver across the bay. I took out my phone. One message sat unread from Sophie. "They're asking about you again." But I told them, "You're busy building something." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because she was right. I turned the phone off, slung the camera over my shoulder, and took one more photo. The shoreline. Empty, glowing. A line between what I'd left and what I'd chosen. And when I looked through the lens, I didn't see a man who ran away. I saw a man who stepped into something real. Something true. Something his.